Wait. So you mean to tell me that Donald Trump and RFK Jr. both named one name when asked who is the real puppet master behind this whole operation? Ladies and gentlemen, comment down below who y'all think it is. I thought it was Obama, but it gets deeper than this? Oh boy, let's get into this. Dan Bongino, start of the week. Hit the like button. Let's fight the algorithm. Let's fight the algorithm for real. Let's go.
So, we all know Obama's been the puppet master. I keep saying all the time, it's not a Hunter Biden scandal. Frankly, it's not even a Joe Biden scandal. Joe Biden's part of the scandal, but he's an accessory to the crime. This whole influence peddling, deep state nonsense, selling the United States out to China and Russia and every other foreign country that wanted to dig at us, basically, is an Obama scandal because Joe worked for him. If Hunter Biden was the patsy for Joe, then Joe Biden's the patsy for Obama. That's a fact. I've been going through this. I love it, by the way. I saw this conservative commentator speaking, who I like, good person, Holman, talking about why is no one talking about how the scandal's about Obama? I'm like, have you even listened to my show? Like, Joe, you can nod your head because I know we can't hear you, but we've been talking about this for what? Like 5 or 6 years now, how this is all an Obama scandal? But there are big deep state players outside of Obama, Biden, Hillary, and John Kerry that we're going to expose on this show because they need their day in the sun. And I'm telling you, none of this stuff. Not the biolabs in Ukraine, not the Hunter Biden fiasco, Joe Biden fiasco in Ukraine, not the Chinese Communist Party influence scandal, not Spygate, not the collusion hoax. Absolutely none of it would be possible without this person. You got a drum roll, Gee?
Who is it? Now, before, because who is it? Who? This thing gets deeper?
Like a little, that's actually pretty good. That's actually not bad. You did it on the desk. Victoria Nuland. Yes, the verdict is in. You know the name? If you read my books on the Spygate scandal, you'd already know who she is. If you're asking who's Victoria Nuland, then this show's for you.
Okay, I'm
asking.
asking.
Ladies and gentlemen, these deep state players, they run their own little carve-outs, too, to keep themselves detached, if you know what I mean, from the real action. I'm going to walk you through this, how I'm not the only one, by the way, that knows Victoria, or Toria, as they call her sometimes. They call her Tori, too. It's like a Tori Amos vibe or something like that, because she's definitely not cool. A lot of people know about Victoria Nuland. I ain't the only one, and I'm glad to welcome them to the party. Here's RFK Jr., running for the Democrat nomination for the presidency, son of Bobby Kennedy. Here's RFK Jr. He's doing a podcast-type episode, and he mentions the military-industrial complex, which, ladies and gentlemen, is a real thing. A military-industrial complex is not a conspiracy theory. There are companies making a lot of money out of permanent war. Now, companies making money off weapons programs is capitalism, and I don't think is a bad thing. However, when it becomes the primary purpose of the company's existence, which is to maintain a permanent state of war at the expense of the citizenry, ladies and gentlemen, I'd call that a problem. I want you to notice the one person, though, he really kind of mentions here, in addition to others, that you never heard of before when it comes to the military-industrial complex. This is RFK. Pay very close attention to this clip. Notice, he specifically mentions Victoria Nuland. We'll get to this in a second here, why he did that specifically. But one thing RFK has been focused on for a long time, not promoting the guy, I don't vote for Democrats, you shouldn't either. But I do promote the truth. RFK knows something I've known for a long time. It's not just about Hillary Clinton, Blinken, John Kerry, secretaries of state. It's not just about Obama, Biden. There have been upper-level people in the State Department who have brought in this deep state conspiracy to take out Donald Trump and have an active interest in making sure you never understand what really happened in Ukraine. Victoria Nuland is one of them. And in case you're asking what she's doing right now, which I probably should have started the segment with, forgive me on that, it's my fault. She's currently the Deputy Secretary of State. The two. She's probably one of the 5 most powerful people in government. Now, don't take my word for it. I want you to listen to someone else you trust out there, Donald Trump. Trump's given a speech about the deep state on YouTube, giving a little talk. Here's about a minute of it. And notice, again, there's one name he specifically mentions in this speech he put on Rumble and YouTube. I want you to listen for the name, and why this name came up is going to be key. Take a listen to this.
World War III has never been closer than it is right now. We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America Last globalists in the deep state, the Pentagon, the State Department, and the national security industrial complex. One of the reasons I was the only president in generations who didn't start a war is that I was the only president who rejected the catastrophic advice of many of Washington's generals, bureaucrats, and the so-called diplomats who only know how to get us into conflict, but they don't know how to get us out. For decades, we've had the very same people, such as Victoria Nuland and many others just like her, obsessed with pushing Ukraine toward NATO.
You think that?
Whoa there. You got Trump and RFK both saying that name. You know what's crazy? I watched that speech and I didn't blink twice. I just kept listening. Maybe I should have done some research on Victoria Nuland.
This is an accident? You think it's an accident? The current Deputy Secretary of State, who, by the way, has connections to Republicans too, folks. Notice I said the deep state, not the Democratic deep state. She has connections to people like Dick Cheney. Is connected deep to Hillary Clinton. Was in the Obama administration. She's now the Deputy Secretary of State. And yet the two renegades running for the presidency right now, actually telling you the truth about the deep state, RFK and Donald Trump, both coincidentally single her out by name. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria Nuland has taken an active interest in Ukraine for a very long time. My book, Follow the Money, that I reference often, the first chapter is called Insane in Ukraine. It describes in detail, this is the thing I need you to remember about Ukraine. Put aside the current conflict for a second. Ukraine has been a piggy bank for greedy, swampy Americans and others for a really long time. There are, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think even Ukraine specialists would agree. Ukraine has been at the center of this big push and pull. Some people in Ukraine want to push them more towards Russia. Others want to pull them more towards the European Union. So you got the Russia side of Ukraine, the European side. Granted, I could go a lot deeper on it. I'm not trying to be silly about it or oversimplify it, but that's the big thing going on in Ukraine right now, the schism. Because having an American on your team with influence is seen as a source of power, i.e. Hunter Biden or Devin Archer, people like that, to have those people on your side is considered a sign of influence in this perpetual Ukraine fight. Americans have been making a fortune. Hunter Biden's just won a lot of money being on either side of this. Paul Manafort was associated with the Trump campaign. He was over there lobbying too. This is not just Democrats who've been involved in this. Ukraine has been a piggy bank for a long time. Having that in your head, I want you to listen now to Hunter Biden's business partner, Devin Archer, where he talks specifically about this thing I wrote about in my book, the Ukrainian piggy bank, how there are these two factions that are fighting for each other in this east-west fight. The eastern part of Ukraine pushing more towards Russia, the western part pulling towards the European Union. This is very important because it describes Victoria Nuland and how Victoria Nuland's endless lust for power involves dictating what happens in Ukraine. Listen to this.
So you're working in Ukraine, and just based on our off-camera conversations, we're actually interested in the business.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of an interesting business, actually. It powers the world. So
right, it powers the world. And
meaningful business.
Yep.
In your time in Ukraine, did you notice a lot of Americans running around from Washington, exerting influence over there?
You know what? I think obviously it's an important part of the world. I think for different factions of different opposing East-West types of views. So yes, there were a lot of Americans lobbying, USAID, State Department officials. There were a lot of Americans.
Because the picture you paint it doesn't sound like a sovereign country. It really does seem like a protectorate or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And the protectorate might be an overstep, but yes, there is a lot of interest in Ukraine and who controls Ukraine, and that's it's a geopolitical conversation.
Woo! Hey! A lot of y'all. Shout out to my moderators because they've been saying this for a while, right? Shout out to Tina. Shout out to Jeannie, Christina. Shout out to Shoemaker. Shout out to everybody. Dinkelman, Dennis. If I'm missing you, I love you. Fallon. Everybody that has brought me into this journey have told me that same thing, bruh. That same thing. My goodness. Shout out Crazy Beat.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine has been a piggy bank. Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's business partner. There's a lot of interest in Ukraine in this East-West fight. Because why? Because there's dinero there. Cheese. Money. That's why. And everyone's been bought off, either through influence or money. They have all been bought off. Folks, I mean, it's fairly obvious now, right, why this is important. Are we engaging heavily in Ukraine for the right reasons? Listen, I obviously don't approve of what's happening. And if Russia stopped fighting today, there'd be peace over there. The Ukrainians stopped fighting today, there'd be no Ukraine. But we should not close our eyes to the obvious. There are clearly upper-level people in our government who are knee-deep in this Ukraine mess, this piggy bank stuff, who may not be making decisions for the right reasons. And my concern is if this escalates into what could turn into World War III and there's an escape ramp, that if Ukraine doesn't want to take it, listen to me, that they're going to wind up